Benvenuti a tutti. Sono entusiasta di essere qui con voi oggi. Il titolo della nostra presentazione è grave, Italian indefinite articles, a guide for English speakers. In questa presentazione, scopriremo come usare correttamente uno, una e per parlare italiano con sicurezza e precisione. Preparo per voi una panoramica chiara e semplice per aiutare a padroneggiare questi articoli indefiniti. Siete pronti? Iniziamo. Let's talk about what indefinite articles are and why they matter. Indefinite articles refer to nonspecific items. In English, we typically use a or an, for example, a book or an apple. However, in Italian, there are 4 different forms of indefinite articles. These forms change depending on the gender of the noun and whether the noun starts with a vowel or a consonant. Getting these articles right is really important because it makes your Italian sound natural and shows that you understand grammar. Now, why is this so crucial? Well, articles are used all the time in everyday speech, so mastering them helps you speak more fluidly. If you use them incorrectly, it can immediately signal to someone that you're a non-native speaker, which is something you want to avoid. Plus, understanding how to use articles correctly is foundational for building proper sentences. It also helps you recognize the gender of nouns, which is key to speaking and understanding Italian accurately. Let's take a moment to compare how articles work in English and Italian. In English, we have a pretty simple system. We use a before words that start with a consonant, like a cat or a dog, and n before words that start with a vowel, such as an apple or an elephant. One important thing to note is that English doesn't consider gender, so all nouns are treated the same way. Now, Italian is a bit more complex. It has 4 different forms of the indefinite article: uno, una, and un apostrophe. These variations depend on both the gender of the noun and how it sounds at the beginning. For example, un is used with masculine nouns starting with a consonant, while uno is used with masculine nouns starting with certain sounds. Una is for feminine nouns starting with a consonant, and un is used before feminine nouns that start with a vowel. This means that in Italian, you need to remember the gender of the noun and also pay attention to how it sounds. It's not just about memorizing a list. It's about understanding that the article must agree with both the gender and the phonetic context. While this might seem complicated at first, with practice, it becomes a natural part of learning Italian, and it's a key step in becoming fluent. Now, let's talk about the masculine indefinite articles in Italian, un and uno. Un is used with most masculine nouns, so think of it as your default choice whenever you're unsure. It's the most common article you'll use when referring to masculine items or people. On the other hand, uno is a bit more specific. It's used with certain masculine nouns that start with particular consonant combinations. These are special cases where the sound pattern requires a different article. Basically, un is your standard, go-to article, while uno applies in those specific instances where the noun begins with certain sounds. Understanding when to use each helps you sound natural and correct in Italian. Remember, selecting the right article is a small detail that makes a big difference in your overall fluency. Quando usiamo l'articolo indeterminativo un con I nomi mascoli, si I sono alcun regole chiave di ricordare. Prima di tutto, si usa un prima della maggior parte dei consonanti. Per esempio, diciamo un libro, un tavolo, un cane, un ragazzo. I grave abbastanza semplice. Si il nome inizia con una consonante, usiamo un. Poi si è un altro regole importante. Si usa un anche prima di tutte le vocali. Quindi, diciamo un amico, un elefante, un uomo, un orologio. Ecco il punto più importante. A differenza dell'inglese, dove usiamo, and davanti alle parole ci iniziano con una vocale, in italiano usiamo sempre un. Questo può sorprendere molti parlanti inglesi, perché non si sono le variazioni tra a e n come in inglese. Quindi, in breve, un funziona già prima del consonanti ci del vocali. Il ci rende l'uso di questo articolo abbastanza diretto, anche se diverso dall'inglese. Ricordarlo si aiuta a parlare correttamente e a evitare errori comuni. Now, let's talk about when to use uno with masculine nouns. You'll notice that in certain cases, especially with special consonant combinations, we use uno instead of il. The main reason is to make pronunciation smoother and more natural. For example, when a masculine noun starts with z, like Zeno or zoo, we say uno Zeno or uno zoo. Similarly, if the noun begins with s plus a consonant, such as student or specchio, we also use uno. Another case is with gn, like nomo, or with ps, such as psicologo. And don't forget x, as in xylophono. These combinations produce sounds that are a bit harder to pronounce with the shorter form il, so sticking with uno makes it much easier to say and sounds more natural. Overall, these special consonant combinations are the key reasons for choosing uno. They help us maintain smooth, clear pronunciation when speaking about masculine nouns that start with these particular sounds. Now let's look at the feminine indefinite articles in Italian, which are una and un. Una is the standard form used before words that start with a consonant. For example, you would say una casa for a house, una ragazza for a girl, or una scuola for a school. On the other hand, un with an apostrophe is used before words that start with a vowel. This is called the elided form, and it's created by dropping the final from the article and adding the apostrophe. For example, unamica means a friend, unora is an hour, and unestate refers to a summer. Understanding when to use una versus un is key to speaking correctly and smoothly. It also connects to the overall theme of mastering Italian articles and pronunciation, helping us sound more natural and fluent. Now let's talk about the rules for una when it comes to feminine nouns. First, before all consonants, you always use una, no matter which consonant the noun begins with. There are no exceptions or special cases here. For example, you say una borsa for a bag, una strada for a street, una zebra for a zebra, and una donna for a woman. A helpful pronunciation tip is that the final in una blends smoothly with the consonant-starting nouns. This creates a natural Italian rhythm and flow that's quite pleasing to the ear. What's great about feminine articles with consonants is that they are actually simpler than the masculine ones. You don't need to worry about any tricky special consonant combinations. Just remember, una stays the same before all consonants, making it straightforward and easy to remember. Now let's look at understanding un with vowel-starting feminine nouns. The key rule here is the elision rule. When a feminine noun begins with a vowel, we change una to un by dropping the and replacing it with an apostrophe. This isn't just a grammatical quirk, it's actually about maintaining the musical flow of spoken Italian. If we didn't do this, the words could clash awkwardly, making speech sound less smooth. For example, we say unamica for a female friend, unidea for an idea, unora for an hour, unestate for a summer, and ununiversita for a university. Notice how the apostrophe appears in each case to connect the article with the noun seamlessly. A critical point to remember is the difference between masculine and feminine nouns. For instance, unamico with no apostrophe is masculine, meaning a friend. But for feminine nouns starting with a vowel, the apostrophe in unamica instantly signals that it's feminine. This small punctuation mark helps us distinguish gender clearly and keeps our speech flowing naturally. Now, let's talk about some common mistakes English speakers often make when learning Italian. One of the most frequent errors is using en logic. For example, saying unamico might feel wrong to you because in English, we need en before vowels. But in Italian, for masculine nouns starting with a vowel, we actually use un. So it's important to remember that un is used for masculine words, regardless of whether they start with a vowel or a consonant. Another mistake is forgetting uno. Many English speakers write unstudent instead of uno student. This is because in English, we don't have a special rule for words starting with s plus a consonant, but Italian does. When a masculine noun starts with s plus a consonant, we use uno instead of un to keep things sounding natural. Then there's the issue of missing apostrophes. Sometimes, learners write una amica without the apostrophe, which results in awkward double vowels. The correct form is unamica, with an apostrophe, because it helps the sentence flow smoothly and sounds more natural. Always remember to use un before feminine nouns that start with a vowel. The key to avoiding these mistakes is regular practice and exposure to authentic Italian. Listening to native speakers and paying attention to how they use articles in context will help these rules become second nature. The more you immerse yourself, the more automatic these patterns will become, making your Italian sound more natural and correct.